All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got a guest on here tonight, Scott Newby. He's one of the probably most elite bass home theaters in the entire world, if not the one of the, certainly. We'll talk about that more later.
Introduction.
Yep. And then we got Ryan and Tim and Sheldon and myself, Kansas City Group. We're going to talk about bass pressurization tonight. And in the context of, you probably read on the forum or heard about it, that bass was so loud it felt like I was underwater, or was pressurizing my ears, or, you know, like I felt pressure from that bass. And you can see arguments on the forum like, is this real? Is that something that's legitimate? Can you actually get there or not? So that's the topic of tonight's discussion. What does it take to get there? Is it desirable? Like those kind of, let's pull those threads and figure out where we land. So I know I want to kind of recount a little bit, just a little bit of history on each of our backgrounds in this hobby, like the different systems we've had, the different systems we've been exposed to. We're going to have a little bit of time to kind of share some of the things that we've experienced in get-togethers, or, you know, like Scott has a annual thing that's bass brings us together. We're going to ask people over and showcases what that's like. So we're going to talk about all those different types of things. First off, guys, how was your week? How have things been?
Don't everybody talk at once now.
Yeah, seriously.
Jump on in there.
Well, you're saying work was kicking your butt all week before we started this whole thing up, Scott, right? So
yeah, well, between work and, you know, Seymour just got me my acoustic screen out, so I've been, you know, I've been busy, man, working all day and then playing in the theater at night. So yeah, so just, you know, I got a 3-day weekend coming up. I just want to use it and knock out some movies. So that's my plan. Get all this wrapped up.
So you got an AT screen. Did you change your screen size too? Did I read that?
Yeah, because the screen moved about 18 inches closer to the seat, and I went down from a 127 to a 115, but it still kept me right around the 50-degree viewing angle, and that's what we enjoy.
Nice.
So I got to ask, Scott, I know your system is extremely capable. What does your family, like, what do you listen to when you have a family movie night? What volume levels?
Usually like 5 to 8 below reference, but I still run the subs, you know, like when they're around like 6 hot. So if it's just me and Kat watching a new movie, reference with the subs 10, 12 hot.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't, just their super extreme stuff bothers her. It makes her nauseous. Like if we go real crazy, but no, she's good with reference with the subs hot.
Mm-hmm. That's about where we land. Our family usually watches movies about -6 anymore. Maybe -8 if my wife's in there, because she's probably the one that's most particular. But my kids are telling me to turn it up, and my wife's telling me to turn it down. So that's where we land.
So you got to find a happy medium.
Yeah.
Well, at least they aren't both saying the same thing. So that's
yeah. Honey, I'm doing it for the kids.
Yeah. My 15-year-old daughter is always like, let's watch everything at reference, Dad. She's fully engaged. She loves it.
Think of the children.
What about the rest of you guys? What do you guys usually like if you got the family involved? That's actually a great question, Jonathan.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Now you go.
Oh, okay. If it's just me, anywhere from -5 to reference. With bass on the traditional subs, not that hot, but on the tactile drivers, stupid hot. With the family, anywhere between usually around like -8. Something like that. I've found that I've turned it up a little louder over the years, and they haven't noticed. So yeah, it's like boiling the frog or whatever. So yeah.
That's actually exactly what I run mine at. I usually run -4, -5 under reference, but if it's the whole family, especially if my mother-in-law tags along, it's usually in the -8 range. So. And the biggest way to make sure I don't have to turn it down is if I know the movie has something like fairly jarring from the get-go, I might start it a little bit lower and just tap it up a couple decibels after whatever that initial shock is. It sort of gets out of the way, and then you're good to go.
By the end, you're like 3 over reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I usually, my bass is on the low end. It's got a pretty big curve up to a tuning port on my setup, and it's about 10 to 12 dB hot, I think, there. So the boundary gain is really bad in my setup. I actually have like a 14 decibel cut on that tune port to get it to that 12 dB above. So
That's nice if you have to cut.
yeah, cut some more.
I'm in the boost world when I try to get flat.
What's that like?
I remember that story from Scrappy Doo with the way his subs were loaded on front in that concrete wall in the small home theater room. He had to cut it was teens of dB. I don't remember the exact number, but in the teens of dB to get flat at 20 hertz. It was boosted too much with the room gain. I'm boosting like 9 dB on mine to get flat. Tim?
Yeah, I run, and it just depends on mood, really. I'd say -10 all the way to reference with about 6 hot on the subs.
Yeah. I'm surprised you guys aren't hotter on subs in general, just in general.
No, my general tune, I'm like 16 hot. You were saying with the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we
Okay.
were talking family.
Yeah. I pretty much leave mine at
12 was hot.
depends on the crowd, right?
Yeah.
I usually run mine like probably 9 to 12 dB hot. Not really 6. That's too low for my preferences, but I hear you. Okay, so on topic here. This is a good group of guys because everybody in this podcast has a pretty capable subwoofer system. And not only that, but has experienced some very capable subwoofer systems, be it in car audio or home theater or both. And so I think you're going to get some real answers. I was reading some threads on Avius Forum on this today, and there really is some squabble. There's people that just say it's not really possible to change the air pressure in the room, that it's not a real thing, that's in your head, that kind of stuff. And there's people that say that it's legitimate. And I think we can provide some real world examples of where it's legitimate, not to be confused with just like acoustic energy, like vibration, that kind of stuff, but like literal pressure changes where pressure waves are moving things and that kind of stuff, not just vibrating, but moving things back and forth. I have some video examples I pulled up from some of the different home theater tours I've been on. I know, Scott, you've recently started exploring again the car audio world. And so, in that world, you can definitely tell like a window's down and they got subs in the back, and you put a t-shirt up or hair in the window and you get hair tricks going on where your hair is, going back and forth, not just vibrating, but blowing back and forth if you put it in slow motion. That's definitely pressure waves. So there is merit to the idea. I want to discuss a little bit like what you think it takes to get there. Can you get there with like a couple 10-inch subwoofers basically in like a average home theater environment?
And I honestly think that part of the reason why it's also a little bit hard to quantify this kind of stuff is if you've never actually experienced, or even if you have experienced it, it's actually really easy to conflate phenomenon with each other. Yes. Right? It's like if your chest cavity is vibrating, or if you're feeling like your eardrums feel like they're almost fluttering. Like those things can happen without like the pressure type of sensation that we're talking about. But somebody might think that's what that is. And on top of that, one of the things that people argue with is like, well, what do you mean by pressure changes, right? Like some people like they're conflating, they're talking about different types of physics phenomenons. Like, well, if it's actually a pressure change of some kind, doesn't that mean you have to be literally changing the temperature of the room with your drivers? And I don't know if we're necessarily going to that type of world with what we're discussing here, but more so the fact that you're actually, moving a force through the room. And back to your original comment about are a couple of 10s going to pull it off? Man, it'd have to be a really, really small room. I'm not even sure you could do that in a closet.
I agree.
So
I agree. Scott and I were texting back and forth earlier today. Like it would be an interesting test for him to get like a barometer since he's in the mid 150 dB range. 156, I think, is your record right now, right, Scott?
Yeah, that's the highest. Yeah, that's the highest we were able to. We had like 144 at 10 hertz and then 156 at 20.
That's so wild. I would think that would show up on a barometer, and it would be super interesting to know if that does, like a weather barometer, where the pressure changes. Like if the needle starts fluctuating, it would be really interesting to see.
And then you'd be hard pressed to know if it was vibrations that was causing the needle to
vibrate.
So it's hard.
Yeah. So like in general, how often do you guys feel like you've experienced this through the course of your hobby over the decades we've been involved? Is this something you commonly encounter in home theaters, like Enthusiast House, or this is a rare thing, or what's your take?
In the Kansas City area,
everybody's mic's broken.
Nobody wants to
Go
be
ahead,
cool.
I think I'm breaking up, so I
Do
might
it,
not
do
want
it.
to go first.
I'm
Oh,
hearing you fine.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, good. In the Kansas City area, we have got quite a few that where it becomes almost commonplace, but overall, it's not an everyday occurrence.
I think personally, this is probably subjective to different people's ears and how much they can feel with their own sensitivities. I feel like in general, there's not very many rooms that can do this. And I wouldn't even put my room in that characteristic of being able to do this, particularly with 18s. Now I got a big floor space, but I think you got to get up to, like, to me, in my experience in multiple rooms and trying to experience this, it's in like the 140 dB range where I start feeling that pressurization. Maybe high 130s, not low 130s, not for me. So do you guys have a number that you can kind of put in place from this, from your experiences?
I would definitely need to quantify that with the cubic feet that you're talking about and distance and
Sure.
stuff like that too. So like I feel like if we're talking like say 1,200 to 1,500 cubic feet, I bet you could feel that into the 130s. If you're doing something like over say 3,000 cubic feet, definitely at bare minimum, you would probably need something in the 140s to get that more visceral pressure sensation going through. Personally, in my room, I have 421s and they have a fair amount of cubic feet behind them. They're all in full Martys, but you're not going to get that effect in my room because it's almost 6,000 cubic feet.
Mhm.
So it's like almost, I wouldn't say it's exponential, but it's got to be up there just for the insane amount of a cone surface that it takes to pull something like that off. So
Mhm.
Yeah, this may not be a great topic for me because the last quite a few years, if I chase that, it hurts my ears.
Mhm.
And I think that's why I've gone kind of crazy with the TR stuff, is because I want a ton of feel. But if I run the subs very hot, it hurts. So I don't know. It's not something that if that didn't happen, I do like the effect, but the older I get, the more it causes actual ear pain. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And that actually brings up another thing too. We're talking about this, but I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't like put this particular characteristic as like, in my top 5 things that I would try to chase if I was trying to be building out a theater room. Is probably closer in the, I would call it the party trick column, if you will, because another big problem is by the time you have that much SPL, it's really difficult to have a room structure that isn't having so many environmental cues going on at the same time that it isn't its own type of distraction. And by that, of course, I mean, like rattles, for example, or doors flapping, or you could, somebody once ran an experiment that if you have a room that's sealed enough, you can actually break glass with a hair dryer, right? So just by, pushing air and, in at a certain, certain method or whatever. But all that to say, it's a difficult thing to get to experience and then still have a rest of the system that's even remotely balanced, which is part of what Carp's talking about here. Man, I like that feeling, but it's so hard to get to that level without, in his particular case, having ill effects to his health.
Yeah. Jonathan, don't you remember your old basement, which was like terrible for bass in general, right? Like
so bad.
The $1,000 sub. We had a lot of subs from that $1,000 sub thread, and they sounded like little fart boxes in there. Do you remember that?
Yes.
But when we didn't the submersive, were we just tricking ourselves? Because I swear other people said this, but I felt like that kind of underwater feeling with my ears on some of the scenes. Now this is like, I don't know, 13 years ago, 14 years ago. But
See, I remember hearing people talk about
that. Can't be possible in a tough basement or a tough home theater room with one submersive. That doesn't even make sense. But I feel like that happened.
I remember people talking about it. I never really felt that in that room until we got to the 2012 meet with dual orbit shifters, and we were hitting that 140 dB threshold with those pair, and I felt like that was maybe the first time I'm trying to remember when the Gorilla 83's meet was, where we went over to Papalock's house. Either that at Papalock's house or the dual orbit shifter was my first time experiencing that in a home theater.
2012 was the blind meet that you're talking about with the dual orbit shifters. Then 2014 is when we went out to, out east.
Yeah, and I don't think I, and it's subjective, like I say, I'm sure to some degree, but I don't think, and maybe even seating position related potentially, in a room with just one single subwoofer with modes and nulls. But I don't remember hearing that or feeling that with the submersive myself. I liked the submersive a lot, but I don't remember pressurization.
And maybe I'm thinking of the
Captivator?
The one you're talking about, but yeah.
No.
I don't even think my dual captivators would do it in that room. And I had a lot of experience with them. I had them in there for years, but the orbit shifters would, the captivators, I just had the single 18 captivators for what it's worth, not the ULF 4000s, but I don't think the single 18 captivators would do that pressurization feel. A lot of
The
fun.
time I felt it the most, and it's not even close, and Jonathan, you're probably the same, was when we went up to Minneapolis to Luke's place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw Scott, it was maybe not as much, but he was in the lower 150s.
152 point something at the time.
Yeah.
With a
Pretty
TermLab mic.
crazy. And it was totally enjoyable because I had, I'm wearing hearing protection. I never took them off. I was too paranoid did you go in there without hearing protection?
No, I bailed out when he got to about the 140 dB range, because that's where it starts getting a little uncomfortable for me. Without good hearing protection, I didn't really have it. So I just know from some of our meets, like if I try to withstand it and just man it out, I'll be sore for like a month afterwards. And that's not worth it to me without protection. But I have a video of that. I'll show it here in a minute. I think that's a great case in point, because he had drop ceiling tiles, the same ceiling tiles I do, Certainty Theater Black F, a commercial theater tile that is basically like OC703 with a felt black fabric on it. Anyway, those theater tiles, do you remember those things bouncing up and down? I have a video of it.
Oh, yeah.
They were bouncing up and down like an inch in the grid, just bouncing. And that's acoustic energy. That's not vibration. They were bouncing in rhythm with the subs pulsing to whatever he was playing bass, I love you or whatever. It was in rhythm to the bass. So acoustic energy absolutely is pressurizing that room to the point it was lifting the entire ceiling tile grid.
Yeah.
I think if you boil it all down, like even at its lowest level, if you have a sealed subwoofer and the driver is moving in and out due to the voltage applied, it's going to compress the airspace behind the driver and compress the airspace in the room alternately. Now, it's going to be very minimal inside the airspace of a room, but it is changing the pressure because the driver is moving and changing the pressure in the room. If you have a sealed room or a small room, the effect is going to be magnified over a large room where it's going to be pretty insignificant. So that's the point Chirpy was making earlier.
Yeah, it would get pretty uncomfortable in this room. When I first built this room, and we built this room to size on purpose, because we knew how many seats we wanted, about the screen size, but I wanted to keep it as small as possible to still do an Atmos setup. But I knew the smaller we went, the higher I could get the SPL numbers, because that's what the build was all about.
Yeah. So
I originally did a solid wood door, but it was even just like in the high 130s, low 140s, it was very, very painful. So I ended up cutting like an inch off the bottom of the door, and that took a lot of that pain away. But if you stand on the other outside the door with like a piece of paper, it just sucks the paper in and out the bottom of the door when the system's playing. But the point is, I enjoy a lot of low bass, but in the 150s it does hurt. When we do those, and if you're not wearing ear protection, your next couple of days are going to suck real bad. But like in the 140s, it's not nearly as painful, since we allowed some of the pressure to get out of the room. And when you're talking about energy, so the room right above us is our family room. We had to get together, and we're going crazy. There's like 5 of us down here. We went upstairs and we're like, where did the couch go? It slid all the way into the other room. So I mean, that's obviously some kind of energy in itself too.
Where did the couch go?
Yeah, we're like, oh my God, where did the couch go? And we walked around and we found it off into the next room. So,
there's like people on it as it's sliding across the room.
Yeah.
This place is haunted.
So
I'm sure to a much lesser degree, but do you remember that happened at Michael Bolker's house too? Desert Dome on the forums. He had that couch with his open air subs in the crawl space under his living room, and his couch would vibrate slowly across the floor. Now that was just tactile, like vibration from the floor bouncing, but still fun to watch.
Yeah, the infinite baffled setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that pressurization feeling for me, I've heard some really capable systems in much larger room, and you know what Chirpy was saying is it really doesn't seem as impactful in a very large room. I mean, with that sensation, I think a big thing about it in this room is just because, you know, behind all the seats is all dual 18s, 15 inches from your head. So you know, you can, you know, you're feeling the energy for sure coming off of that.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's strange. A lot of people don't get it until they come over and experience it. And then they're like, oh, that's cool. It just seems ridiculous talking about it online. But yeah, you know, and a lot of people don't understand too, is, you know, when you're talking 8, 9, 10 hertz and you're talking 140 dB. Well, if you think about 200 hertz at 140 dB, you know,
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people don't understand that the super low bass, even though it could still be damaging to your ear, but I don't find, like, to me, 130, 140 at 10 hertz, I don't find uncomfortable at all.
Did you have to
That's
work
what
up to that? Or has that always been like that, Scott? I'm sorry to cut someone else off, but like that 130, 140 and not uncomfortable to you. Is that
Well, not uncomfortable at like 10 hertz. No, I didn't really have to warm up to that. I did have to warm up to it at like the 20, 30, 40 hertz range. And what's, you know, and obviously all you guys probably go through this, especially if you do back-to-back sessions. But, you know, if your room's down for a month and then you listen, you're like, whoa, I'm not that guy anymore.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I've heard
Well,
that
and
experience.
it's amazing if you haven't done it for a while, which is hard to do, but if you haven't played music or movies in a while and then you do, it's like, wow, this is amazing. And then the next time it's still pretty amazing. But then if you do it too much, it gets you get used to it. It doesn't blow you away as much as it did. Scott, what I wanted to know, what I've been curious about, because you say 140 ish dBs at 10 hertz doesn't hurt, and that's kind of what I would think. I'm not surprised by that. So do you run curves on like a mini DSP to have it be that, or like even 120? So you said you hit 150 something at around 20 hertz hits over 150 dBs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you run a curve that is that hot at 20 hertz that does not hurt your ears? Or is that still too much at 20 hertz?
No, that's still too much. I mean, for it to really enjoy it. Well, see, actually, for the curve going up to 10 hertz, it's a natural curve. I guess just by the dimensions of the room and with the subs being 10 hertz port tune, at 10 hertz, it just shoots straight up. I got like an automatic free 12 dB at 10 hertz. So I don't, that's just a natural curve. So I don't add to anything. It's all cuts when I do the tuning. But yeah, even if I cut it some more 20, because I like the pressure in your chest and that weird feeling. And for me, that's all like 30 hertz and below. But yeah, 20, 30 hertz at 145-ish dB starts to become really uncomfortable. And then by the 150s, pretty much everybody's already left the room, except for you know, because now I'm mixing myself back in with the car audio crowd. It's strange because you're going at 150 and they're like, "All right, man, crank it up." And then the home theater guys already left the room, you know, so it's strange. But like you were saying, how you get used to it, you know, because our last big event that we had, we ran all day for 10 hours. And I start the demos or I'd hang out with the group before I leave the room. So by the end of the day, it didn't seem like nothing, but a fresh group would come in. They're like, "Oh my God, that was insane." Like, wow, my head was shaking. And, you know, after you listen to it for hours on end, you know, because your ears start to close up to protect themselves. So you're not getting in nearly as much information as you were getting in.
And is this the part where we put in the disclaimer for be careful not to be listening at these levels?
Well, everybody that comes over has to sign an insurance waiver.
Yeah. And the other thing too is it really is true though. When you do get to those lowest frequencies, like some people will be like 140 frequencies, you would have your ears killed within seconds. It's like, no, not when it's that low. Like the sensitivity level and how your ears will be damaged physically, it's way different. Like if it was 140 dB and you're at like a 500 hertz, 1000 hertz, that would kill you in a matter of seconds.
And I don't think anybody would find that enjoyable. I mean, us
Yeah.
bass heads, we get into the 120s and 130s, no problem. But yeah, I mean, I'm not listening to 1,000, hertz at 130 dB. Ain't no way. Yeah, no interest.
I was going to bring up, this is mostly a party trick for like demos and short clips and things like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Youthman said it best when he was out. He goes, this is definitely just a party trick thing. Because when we do our demos here, they last like 20 minutes. Everybody gets reference with the subs, 14, 16 hot. And then at the end, I'm like, hey, if you want to check out the crazy stuff, we'll do 20 seconds of that. And some people stay and some people don't. But yeah, it's certainly, it's just certainly something to just have some fun with.
Somebody mentioned, speaking of testing, Les in the chat mentioned room pressure could potentially be measured with a manometer. I know I own one when I ran some gas lines. I know you're in plumbing, Scott. You wouldn't have a manometer lying around, would you?
I don't got one on me. No.
Oh, okay.
I usually don't come to the theater without one. That's strange.
So
there was a good conversation here. Somebody asked, how is this different? How is SPL different in home audio versus car audio? And Scott, you might be best attributed to answer that one.
Well, because a lot of the guys I'm hanging out with are on the extreme edge of the car audio stuff. I mean, you find out a lot in car audio that 20 hertz is stupid low in the car audio world. I mean, a lot of the guys are, 25 to 50 hertz, depending on their build. It's different in the fact is it's a lot. You got a lot of subs all around you. I mean, so like the one guy's car just demoed, he had 15 subs in a Suburban. So you got 15 subs all within like 6 feet from you, and they're all slamming at a couple thousand watts each, coming out of like a small port right into the back of your head.
Yeah, it's all near field.
Yeah, exactly.
By default, it's almost all near field.
What I've noticed. So, say I do a 155 in my room and I experience a 155 in the car. My ears feel about the same, but your throat feels different. In a car, you get choked up a little bit, where in the home, I feel a lot more in my chest than I do like in the throat. I don't know. It's, plus you got the windshield. Everything's bouncing right off that windshield right back in your face too. So it's the same, but it's different. I know that's a confusing answer, but just a different experience.
I'm sure some people are watching, listening to this, and they're like, this doesn't sound pleasant at all. My throat, my chest.
How I would describe it is in a car, it's more like visceral, like you're in the middle of a tornado or a hurricane, where like in a house, in a home theater, it's more like being in an earthquake. Like they're both very intense. It's just a very different, like more open feeling in a house. Where in a car, I feel like it's just very visceral because you also have all that wind and movement and everything. It's all very compact.
Scott, when you're running 155 dB in your house, do you see like dust particles flying around and stuff, or does it?
That's funny that you say that. Is the very first get together I had when I switched from Power Sun Audio to JTR. We had Mark Seaton was over here and Jeff from JTR, and Youthman was doing his first audio filming. And I didn't have nearly the setup I have now. I think I had maybe 10 18s in here. And so we broke the door jam. Jeff from JTR is holding it. He's like, all right, go ahead and hit it again. Ceiling fell down in Youthman's lap. He's like, what is going on around here? So yeah, then that's when I switched to a solid door. And then all the ceiling tiles are fender washered, screwed to studs. And yeah, but even though how many demos I've ran here, you still see stuff floating around. It looks like a little snowstorm going off in here.
Mm-hmm.
You put me through some good demos at your place, and I still praise you to this day that you got the quietest room, Jonathan. I didn't hear, man, a little squeak or anything in your room. I got my room pretty much dialed in with any squeaks of that, but I can still hear something now and then. But your whole demo, that whole night we were over, I didn't hear one rattle, one squeak. That was awesome.
Well, I'm going around putting nails in the drywall right before the meet and everything too. To try to
You get liquid nails. You get liquid nails. Everybody gets liquid nails.
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, but Scott, if you put 9, what do you have? 9
150
4000s? If you put 9 of those in Jonathan's room, I bet
It'll
you'd
probably
find some.
explode.
You'd find some new rattles.
Yeah.
And 1/3 the cubic feet.
No doubt. No doubt.
Oh, that's
That's
funny.
funny.
It will want to get out.
So, Jonathan, how about you talk about the 2 overshifters at your old house where it wreaked havoc on like everything in your house?
Yeah, I think this is worth talking about a little bit. I think there's a difference between like acoustic energy and vibrational damage versus pressure waves. I'm not smart enough to put them in like some sort of order or make understanding of it, but you can do damage with acoustic energy that's like legitimate physical damage. It can unscrew light bulbs. I mean, it can break drywall screws. It can break projector alignments. It can break DVD and Blu-ray alignments. All those things happen with the dual orbit shifters. It can break tile, grout and this probably is more acoustic energy with the waves. My kitchen was right above the home theater in my previous house, and it had a tile floor. And it was a wooden suspended floor. The kitchen was wooden suspended floor right above the home theater. And during the course of our 2012 blind shootout, there was like a free for all section where Jeff of JTR Speakers that turned us up a couple of orbit shifters up as loud as they'd go. And it literally broke, no kidding, the grout between my tile and my kitchen. And that was just assumedly from the floor flexing, like that house was built in the 1960s. The tile was in their price since the 80s. With no broken grout, but that was enough to break the grout in the tile. And so certainly the flexing of the floor, some of the stuff would just be vibrations because for instance, a light fell out in the bathroom upstairs and the bathroom was not right above the home theater. That surely wouldn't have been like Sheldon's back. That surely wouldn't have been like acoustic pressure waves there so much as just vibration that would have unscrewed that light bulb in the bathroom and made it fall. And I've been over at Grill 83s where a bathroom fell out of the ceiling, where a light bulb fell out of the ceiling, like unscrewed itself.
Yeah.
And I've had it in my house here, like up above, directly above this room. I've had 2 or 3 lights fall out, like floodlights up there, the big wide lights. So that happens, and that's not pressure based, that's vibration based. So there's a difference. I think I don't know how to put any more wisdom into that to explain the difference, but there's a difference between pressure and vibration with acoustic energy.
How does the vibration happen without pressure?
Well, I think you could
Use
answer that by
subwoofers.
going outside, because if you take subwoofers outside, you can still have vibration, but the pressure difference would be immaterial, right? Like if you had a pile of 18s outside, are you really changing the pressure of the outside world? No, but you can make pressure waves. And I got a video showing that with hair tricks outside from one of those semi trucks that has all the drivers on the front. Like the pressure wave behaves differently than the vibratory aspect, the acoustic energy transfer. Does anyone have any smarter ability to explain that more clearly than that?
Hulk sonic
No.
cannons.
Yeah.
No, I've seen on the forum. It was years ago, but I think it was Dominguez one, Paolo, his thread on the topic, and there was just endless, not by him, but arguments amongst people, including Bosso Bay. So this was a long time ago, like what it actually is, the particles and this and that, and my eyes just kind of glazed over, and I couldn't. I just skimmed and scanned. I guess I just don't care that much about what's doing it, but. Yeah, I'm sure there's some people that know that are screaming at us right now, but yeah.
I always thought pressurization was just accumulation, but maybe I misunderstood
of the waves.
Yeah, it's literally when it's accumulated enough to cause noticeable movement of the air, which causes the physical sensation. Done.
Well, like if I'm playing the stereo loud in my basement and I'm rattling studs in the wall that are connected to the studs on the second floor, then it's just the transmission of that energy. That isn't the actual my system doing it per se. I mean, it's just a transmission of energy throughout the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you might have a point there, Scott. Maybe that's what it boils.
Waves.
Maybe that's what it boils down to. Like the waves are doing it in his room below, and then it's transmitting through the studs, through the frame of the house to the upstairs. Not so much the pressure waves, like it wouldn't be as measurable.
That's
in the
mechanical
bathroom.
energy transfer when that
There you
happens.
are.
Is what's called.
That's probably
Pisses off the wife. That's all I know.
So I always considered acoustic energy that's by default present in all sound. On the other hand, pressurization, it's specifically associated with that feeling of increased air pressure, right? So that's sort of where I draw the line in the sand between one side versus the other.
Let me show you a couple of videos. This seems like a good time to kind of segue into that. And then if you guys have anything you'd like to share, by all means, I would like to do that as well. So I'm going to share my screen. It's going to look crazy for just a second, and then we'll show a couple of these things. So let's do this. Let's do entire screen, actually. Oh, and I messed up because I got to turn off HDR again. Bear with me just a second, or it's going to look really washed out. Turn that off.
Well, those pretty colors really worth the effort.
Okay, that should be good. So now present entire screen. Can you tell me if you can see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go. I got a little list here of some quick clips. This is our friend Austin. He goes by Papa Lock on the forum. And we went over to a meet of his a few years back where he was kind of showing some party tricks with 16 18s in sealed boxes. And he had a very small home theater room, but it was not sealed. There was a hallway that left the room. And there were some amazing things happening in that house because of the 16 18s that were hitting in unison. So let me do this. So here, let's make this full screen. Okay, so I'll set this up. The home theater room, if you were looking at this bathroom door, would be to your left. So it's right behind you. And he's playing, I think this was just like the 7 Hertz from Black Hawk Down, where the
Irene.
So you're gonna see this is just paper towels. Like he hung paper towels from the bathroom door to kind of show the acoustic energy that was happening in the basement. All right, so that's a video, and you can tell that it's not just like shaking. It has pulsing. It's moving with waves. And I'll go to the next one here.
And that's like 7 Hertz from that scene, if I remember right, from Black Hawk Down.
You're right.
Yeah, the Irene
Here's some
scene,
French
correct?
doors. I'll make
Yeah.
that larger. Let me rewind just a second there.
That is so violent.
Yeah.
They have these doors. These French doors were down the hallway. They weren't even really close to home theater. It looks like some sort of like phantom or something is shaking those doors and moving.
Yeah,
forward.
poltergeist.
There you go. There's Sheldon. That was 10 years ago. That was a lot of fun in that. So,
That right there is actually why I put magnetic catches on my HVAC door in my theater room, because I wanted it to float when it shook, as opposed to being inside of a strike plate where it would rattle. So when my door is shaking, it doesn't rattle because a magnet holds it in place.
Ah, good idea.
So here's another one. This is Sheldon's pants.
Oh yeah, my pants.
And the tablecloth back here. You can just see how much energy is in that room.
He may have just been cold though.
Oh yeah, you know I was cold.
Okay,
I'm
so
always
then
cold.
we got, this is Luke and the Man. His ceiling tiles flapping that I was talking about earlier. They were like lifting. So you can see
Yeah.
those things just
That was a
out
good
the whole room, just bouncing. All this bouncing. And you have to remind me, what did he have, like 10 21s in there that were?
The 21s, I think there might have been 12, but the 21s were just from like something ridiculous, like 17 Hertz and down. And then he had odd horns that took over above that. So yeah, that was for the very, very low stuff. I've got a picture of his speakers if you want me to show that at some point. That's the only picture I could find. You remember
Absolutely.
those huge things?
I do. So I'm gonna show one more video, and then I'm gonna show some pictures, and then you guys can share some stuff where we can talk about what we're seeing here. But this is that semi truck that I was talking about that can make hair tricks outside, and so it's not pressurizing the world like that. That's not happening, but it's definitely sending enough acoustic energy, like pressurization waves, that it's making hair tricks. I'm about to do it in StreamYard Studio. That'd be bad. That would disrupt. I mean, so
Yeah, I remember this.
right? You've probably seen this before. This is down in Central America. There's a whole bunch of 15s, and it's in a semi rig, and they just close it up and drive it to the next spot. But look at her. I mean, look at her hair. And then it'll show here in a second. There's a can on the floor that's literally getting vibrated back away from the audience. And you can find a lot of these videos of this particular thing, and there are things where, like, if it's a dusty day instead of concrete, it makes like a dust storm because there's so much acoustic energy coming off those subs. Like, it every time it pulses, and I couldn't find one in real brief. I should have looked one up longer before the video here. But every time those subwoofers pulse, it makes like a clear impact into the dust clouds and stirs up more.
If I hit the lottery, that's going to be the front wall behind my screen.
There's a guy named Brian Fellers here in Kansas City group that I really hope implements it. He's been talking about and has the subs to do it. You know, those JBL 12s that are incredibly, they're cheap.
Yeah, like $29 each when they're on sale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He bought a mountain of
like
them.
60 of them.
Enough
How many?
to do his whole front wall. I mean, just a lot. I don't know, but enough to do his
Well, I
whole
was
front
over
wall.
there. And it looked like, I don't know, maybe 60 of them. There was a lot. That may not be the right number, but he had a lot of them.
Point being that I was thinking, like, he's going to have that potentially in his room. Like, how wild is that to have that kind of impact, that kind of wave? And that kind of brings me to my next thing I want to share. I'm just going to go over a few pictures here. So, I told you guys that I don't think I can create that amount of bass in my room. I've tried different arrangements. I've tried them all against the front wall, as I've said in other podcasts. I've tried the four corners. There's two in the front on each corner. I'm sorry, 4 in the front, 4 in the back, 2 on each corner. That doesn't do it. There's not enough cone for the driver space. I want to mention this, though. If I ever had any approximation to feel like this was in my room, it was when I had my subs stacked. So earlier this year, for a short time, I tried putting my 18s in 2 stacks equidistant from the main listening position. And at SPL levels that I normally listen to and I'm very comfortable with and have no issues with, I was feeling discomfort. And all I could attribute it to is because now, instead of having, I have my subs kind of in like a half moon array or a little bit of curve here, and then I have 3 near fields back there. So normally there's 5 up front and 3 behind this front row is near field. When they were in this arrangement, the impulse response was a lot more accurate, like notably so on OmniMic graphs that I was doing, or just in the feel. And if you were in this seat or this seat, that wasn't the case. Like, you didn't feel that same impact. But when you're in this seat and the subs were to the inch, the exact same measurement away and getting the same signal, I've shared this before and I'll share it again now. It really felt like anytime there's like a dance club or an EDM song or something with repetitive bass beats, it was uncomfortable in the sense that at the same volumes I normally like, it felt like someone was clapping their hands over my ears and giving my eardrums a pressure I didn't like. So to me, I'm not only talking like, I'm talking the loud volumes. I'm talking like spirited listening. Again, I listen to my stuff 9 to 12 dB loud on the subs and reference levels. So we're talking probably, approaching 130 dB type levels, maybe a little louder if I'm getting really spirited. At that type of levels, this normally is not uncomfortable, and I really enjoy it. That's what I like. It was uncomfortable to me. So there's something to that aspect where that impulse response is hitting you more directly, more in time between all the drivers. And I think that same ideology is what we're talking about with that one we just watched, the video of the 15s in the wall, that makes that hair trick outside, because that time alignment, the wave is all aligned. So I wanted to share that. And then a couple more pictures here recently. We were over at Moltar's house. He's Ryan. We do the Sunday podcast together and used to do it with Youth Men as well. This is his 50-inch sub in his room. And so far to this point, he's never even really cranked on it. But I mean, just Sheldon, how tall are you? You're like 6'2" or 6'4", or what are you?
6'1". They're giving me
6'1". But look at the size of that driver.
Is wrestler height.
And here's Tim and Sheldon in the same picture with that 50-inch. Now, he has 11 subs in that room. There's 2 32s and a 50 and 8 21s. And that room is very small. So, I mean, talk about pressurization. He could do it. He just doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't have the interest to do it so far. And that doesn't have his equipment anchored enough where he feels confident to do it so far. But those are some of the things I wanted to show and talk about. So let me stop screen. And then, Sheldon, you had something you wanted to share. And if you guys have something else that you'd like to share, feel free to cue it up.
Well, yeah, it's not quite on topic now since we're not talking about Luke's room anymore, but I just wanted to show his awesome Frankenstein speakers. Let me share here.
You know, while you're pulling it up, I remember anecdotally, he had those speakers and they were something really incredibly stupid sensitive, right? Weren't they like 113, 112 dB sensitive or something like that, if I recall correctly?
Yeah, super.
And I remember
Sure.
thinking, like, I am actually a little bit afraid because if something goes wrong with his setup and like it, you know, like it burps full power or some of those speakers, like that would be unbelievably painful. Not bass painful, like unbelievably painful. If the main suddenly cranks up with that kind of sensitivity speaker.
I don't know if it's working or not. Are you guys seeing this?
We do not yet.
I don't think I'm gonna be able to. I don't know why. Because on my end it looks.
How about
like
there?
it's
There it
showing.
is. There it is.
You see it?
Now we do. All
Yeah.
right.
You see it now?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so just the speakers themselves, even if you didn't have those, it's either 10 or 12 21s plus the yacht horns and all that, you're getting a lot just from these. Yeah, the 112 sensitivity. Is that what you're saying, Jonathan? That's what I remember.
I don't.
Like
That's what's coming to mind. I'd have to go back and
Yeah.
look at the thread to try to get exact, but it was somewhere in that realm.
Which, man, that's got to be. And I know that Ryan Moltar, Charpentier, I know he has, those super.
They might
aren't
even be
sensitive?
more sensitive. They
Yeah,
might
they're
be
like
one-
more than that. Man, you talk about my mains or my left, right, center are 104, and that's already like issues with making sure you're not hearing hiss and all that kind of stuff. I can't imagine like 112 or even higher than that. But I don't remember hearing hiss from Luke's speakers. I wonder if he got rid of these too. It's kind of sad he doesn't have a setup anymore, but
Mhm.
yeah. So
Somebody actually brought up the rotary subs, which actually do run on the principle of pressurization, right? They're an incredibly specific tool, though. To my recollection, they don't handle anything but say 20 hertz and below. They can't really do anything else very well because of the way that they're designed. But for those who aren't familiar with rotary subs, it literally looks like a fan that's blowing into a manifold, right? And so, but how they work to have different tones is they have the literal fan blades, they can pitch and twist, and that will change the amount of air drag that they have. And that's how they respond to different tones to be able to create different SPLs at different frequencies. And that's also why they could never work at a higher frequency range, because they simply can't respond fast enough or well enough. They're just not very efficient for that type of situation. And they're expensive. Like I don't remember the exact price. All I remember is like they start somewhere around the 20K range is what I read once upon a time. And it seems like they didn't really take off as far as like a mainstream answer for the tool, if I as I recall.
There was a YouTube series way back where someone was trying to DIY one, and they made it functional. Yeah, I don't know if it's still out there or not, but it's very interesting. I like the technology behind it, but yeah, the expense is definitely something that turns you off real fast.
Yeah, and the only ones I've seen, they're like under the floor. Is that the only kind, or is there others? I mean, can they just be like out in the room, or do they need to be like in the floor?
They have to be separate somehow because they're quite loud. That's another big issue with them. Like literally, they sound like a high-pitched whine the entire time. And so they either need their own like adjacent room, or they need to be built sectioned off within the room somehow, where it's taking up a fair amount of the air cavity of the room in order to make it work the way it's supposed to. So
yeah, I think infinite baffle, where it's like outside the room and pushing air into the room, seems to be the way that most have done it.
I want to know who's got the drum. Who's got the guitar cord or the drum? I hear a little thump, 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 thump. You guys don't hear it?
Oh, I did.
I don't know where it's coming from.
Oh, Callie's playing Mortal Kombat in the other room on the arcade. Maybe that.
Oh,
that's what you're.
I hope that's what it is.
That's funny. So
Yeah.
this is an interesting comment, and I'm curious of you guys' perspective on this. This is Home Theater from Denmark. He actually is from Denmark. He was posting here earlier. So he says that his friend had a couple 15s, and his t-shirt and pants were doing this. And I would say I think you have a pretty blessed room, or you're standing in a mode to do that with dual 15s. That'd be my
You
guess.
can make clothes vibrate though without having
Yeah.
Shaking
My
like
old-
what Sheldon's were in that room with 16 18s.
My
That
old
The
room.
thing, well, Jonathan, whoa, why did I zoom in?
Whoa.
thing with
All right, man, we're all watching you.
Dun, dun, dun. Dramatic zoom.
And I'm doing back up. Jonathan, the thing with that video, that those were all 7 hertz.
Yes.
So you're not doing that with a couple of 15s. Yeah. So all the vibrating that you're seeing, the doors, the pants, the paper towel, that was the helicopters in Black Hawk Down. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking back. So in our subwoofer shootouts, 2011, 2012, when we had a variety of subwoofers in those rooms, it was like the entrance point to the top tier when you could get a little close flutter, like a little bit of close flutter, and that was like most times a single 15 or a single 18, but not like this, which was happening in the video. That's
And
pretty
and
more
not
remarkable.
and not at that hertz level. That's the biggest.
And I would be curious to know if they were sitting in a chair when that happened, and if that chair was sitting on a riser or on a suspended floor, because all of that can contribute to that pant flapping type effect, right? Like I had what I would consider my previous theater. Oh, I missed that thing. Like you could get a pretty decent visceral bass effect in the back row from 112-inch.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing
wasn't it the sub that had the 212s in it?
Nope, just one. That's what everybody always thought. Everybody always thought it was the dual 12.
Ridiculous.
Still doesn't even matter
Yeah.
now after all these years.
And the amount of tactile effect that you could get from that and actually feel like your clothes vibrating was pretty decent. That thing would be a fart box in the wind in my current room. It wouldn't do a thing. And to what you're talking about, Sheldon, too, it also depends on what frequency range you're talking about. If you're in like 25, 30 hertz range, you can get a little bit of like you can get that clothes vibrating, a little flapping kind of thing going on if you're in close proximity or something like that. But that 10 hertz stuff, that 7 hertz stuff, there's just not enough. The face of the cone is not enough. I don't care how much excursion you're getting out of that thing. That thing would have to have like a 4-inch travel to stand a chance.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, to kind of go with what they're saying, what is happening? Jonathan, you have videos and stuff of you playing with your captivators, making like what was that, a sleeping bag or something, kind of floating on your floor and you're blowing out candles. It's very different, yes, but that's where someone could get confused as they're feeling this sensation that's not the same as what they just saw.
Like a big puff of wind instead of
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you see the video, like a lot of people are doing, like the SVS PB16 with the candles, blowing that out. I mean, if your pant leg was 6 feet away from that, you'd feel it flutter.
Sure, you're right.
Yeah.
And shoot, even my stupid screen being in the way of my subs also kills that effect because it's the port velocity. The air literally hits the screen. The screen blocks the air from getting to the audience. And I kind of, that's actually something that kind of bums me out a little bit. It causes a screen to vibrate. Literally, you can see the ripples go through the screen as opposed to feeling the air hit you, right? So there's stuff like that too.
I get a lot of port wind in here. The captivators are pretty well known for like that 10 hertz port wind. So, you feel a lot of when, everybody always says they feel their hair moving and your clothes will start flapping, pretty good in here. But, just another, a tribute to having a ported sub. So.
Yeah, I do miss that from my old captivators. Jonathan, you had said that before too, right?
Yeah, that's something I definitely miss about ported subs was just that extra air movement. I think it's kind of adds a lot to the experience, like a visceral, like an explosion happens and you get a gust of wind off of it.
Yeah,
it's pretty fun.
Yeah, a friend of mine has 2 HSU VTF 15s, and the seating's probably like 8 feet back or something like that. But you get a lot of port wind just from those little guys because they're just aimed right at you in the seating area. Yeah. I always get kind of sad.
I don't think that kind of port wind, and I'm not discounting it because I like it, but I don't think that that's like in time with the frequency. Like we saw those things that were moving in time with the frequency. Port wind kind of ends up
Delayed.
like the sleeping bags. It just like lifted the sleeping bag up in the air. It wasn't like sucking it back and forth per se, like in time with the hertz. Does that make sense? Like it
Well, I
moves
think with
things.
the port wind, if you have continuous explosions or a multi-second, then it can trick your mind into thinking. But if it's like at the snap of a finger kind of thing, it's
Mhm.
it's going to be very delayed effect for
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm. But most scenes that are like that do have continuous.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes.
So yeah.
So it just kind of tricks your mind into it, like, wow, you're so overwhelmed because it was a 5-second explosion, which is a long time. Then just somebody slamming a car door, and you feel a gush of wind after the car takes off. This different.
Yeah.
Or if you just sit in your theater and listen to Bass I Love You all day, I mean, then you're just used to the wind pouring all over you nonstop. And you're speaking of that too about the port wind, as the video years ago of Seaton putting that head in front of the Captivator, blowing it across the JTR shop. Just another thing of the wind grabbing a hold of something and throwing it around.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan, we were doing that at one of the sub meets. I think that was the 20 Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Hamschmidt had his hat
up there.
Yeah, blowing it across the room. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Let me show you what we're talking about with the Captivator versus sleeping bag real quick, and then I'll stop again. But this is worth seeing. So, can you see the screen here?
Yeah.
This is a couple Captivators, and then I mean, just look at all the wind coming out of there.
On that, Jonathan.
No, those are the single 18
Yeah.
caps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's War of the Worlds. I'll rewind a little bit since it's full screen now. But that's I'm gonna turn it down. That's War of the Worlds, and there's I mean, it's not really that's probably like 30 hertz type of stuff for explosions, right? But there's a lot of wind that's coming out of that port, and I didn't hear the ports. Like it's not like it's obnoxious wind because it's a slot port, but it moves enough air to make the experience that much more fun because you're just like your clothes are moving and you're feeling that wind. So yeah, I agree. I wish I had that on my current system.
Do you still have a fan on your floor to kick on and off?
Not right now, but yes, I have that capability and I've played with that. And it works better than nothing. I like that too.
Yeah.
Does it work as well as it'd be quicker than the port, right? So when you had it going, didn't the wind they had it timed up kind of like the bass EQ thread? Didn't they have like the fan fire before the bass hit in the movie?
I didn't take it to that level because you have to buy quite a bit more equipment. What I did was buy like a light organ thing where it's basically for Christmas lights. It has like a low frequency, a medium frequency, and a high frequency. You plug into RCAs, and when it detects a frequency within a certain band, it goes ahead and sends the signal out. And I hooked that up to like a squirrel cage fan, and so it was just passive. Like if it got low frequencies from the LFE track, it would turn the fan on, and it worked. And surprisingly, it worked great. The simple reason I don't have it is because you don't want it for music, right? Because it's coming on if there's 50 hertz frequencies. It's not that smart. So I would just have to toggle it on and off for movies, and I just haven't messed with it.
Especially if you get cold easy.
But for movies, it was fun, and I would have people that wouldn't even know the difference. They'd literally say, many guests when I had that hooked up like that, many guests would say like, "Is that from your subs?" And you wouldn't even tell them because the cage was just nondescript over there in the corner. Nobody knew the squirrel cage was on.
Yeah, it's a rotary sub. Yeah, that's what it is.
Now, the thing you're talking about, Sheldon, is where you have a wind track, and they tailor that for your fan and how long it takes for the air to reach you, and the coding's there to say like this should be low, medium, or high wind. And there's a whole thread on this in AVS form. It's super cool. It's a little complicated. You start the track at the same time you start the disc, or use a Raspberry Pi or something that will do it. And then it automatically has the timestamps built in. Like at this point on this timestamp, the fan should be on high, but it needs to turn on 3 seconds early because that's my custom time for the fan to make the air be felt by me. So you program in those different parameters, low, medium, high, and it adds wind to your movie tracks. It's really cool.
Is that Nick that did that?
Sir Master on the forums is the guy that coded that.
Yeah, that's Nick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's implemented in a few theaters. In fact, we had it at one of the M-Wave demonstrations here at my house because SOWK brought it over here. And we kind of compared my little rudimentary light organ thing against his, and his was a lot better. Like mine is good. His was like spot on. I mean, like perfect. Like you can't get any better. The only thing you'd have to tailor is your low, medium, and high is kind of like a hard preset on most fans, right? You don't get to like dial it in. I want 78% instead of 85%. So you'd have to kind of like figure out a fan that was the right amount of air for you. That's the only caveat. Otherwise, it's excellent. And that works for movies, or it works for music because it doesn't even work with music. Like it's not on. You wouldn't want it on with music is what I'm trying to say. And it's not on with music because there's no track for it.
What if you're watching a Blu-ray concert that's outdoors? Like, oh, it's
There you go. Someone can code for it.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, they have hundreds, and just to wrap that one up, they have hundreds of movies that are coded for that, if not thousands at this point. There's especially one guy on Avius Forum, his name I don't remember off the top of my head, but he's coded a whole lot of movies. And that's nothing more than going through the timestamp and saying, hey, there's wind in this scene at 1 hour and 23 minutes and 17 seconds.
Was that Geomania by chance?
No, but he uses it too.
Yeah, because I was just at his house. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
And he
Mark has that system as well.
Yeah,
it's really cool. And
Tony does too. Tony from JTR has it too.
Right. He's the one that brought it over to my house to demo it over here.
Oh, okay.
And it's remarkable. Okay, so we have a couple questions starred, and I know Scott, you had said that you had to kind of dip out at some point here to put.
Yeah, I got like 15, 20 minutes, and then I gotta go.
All right, let's go through the questions, and if you guys have anything else that you'd like to bring up in the podcast, let's start thinking about that as well. So here's the first one here. Yeah, this is regarding, I think Sheldon was saying that you kind of sneak up the volume a little bit, or maybe Ryan was saying that you sneak up the volume a little bit after the first impact and explosion, so you can saying they're doing that at church too, so it's not as
I love it.
as stark a contrast.
Volume creep.
I like it.
We handle all the old ladies.
Kind of like the Queen movie where he goes and moves it above the tape.
Oh, this is a good comment here.
It is. It's worth discussion.
Yeah. So you mind if I start off on this one?
By all means.
Okay. So yeah, in my room, I've tested it so many times. I can't feel anything. And this is with 16, 18-inch subs. I can't feel anything below, I don't know, 13, maybe 12 at my seated position, which is a good 10 plus feet from all the corners, if not more, something like that. So yeah, for me, it's kind of like, I'll know it's happening because the house is like making terrible sounds. But as far as like it actually making, like you saw in the video at Papa Locks, it doesn't do anything. Now, if I stand up and move around the room, I can get to places where I get real nice feel from like single digit stuff from the subs that are stacked in the corners, but that doesn't matter. It's just the way my room is. It's not doing too much here in the middle where the seats are. So that's when all the tactile response drivers take over. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to have sealed subs, but I'm not going to change it now. But yeah, I know exactly what Peter's talking about.
It's funny that you say that because 13, 12 hertz or whatever, that's roughly where mine drops off a cliff, right? Because my port tune's at 17, 16 and a half, something like that. If I wanted to, I could EQ the whole thing flat, though, down to about 12, 12 and a half. But I tried pushing it down to 10 and even 8, and I couldn't get more than, say, like 110 decibels out of it. But I can't get anything but environmental noise. That's and even that's a little bit slight, and that's partly because I spent so long trying to build it as inert a structure as possible. The irony of it is, the more well built the room is, the less environmental cues you're getting with the really low bass, and the less impressive initially it might come off, and then you realize that you're going to need even more horsepower for it to even do anything for you. And that's the wonderful thing with transducers, is they pick up the slack for something that just becomes so grossly efficient in certain room environments, especially those on a concrete slab and really large cubic volumes.
Now, for me, I like, if you like the lone survivor scene, I think the helicopter scene in that gets pretty low too. I don't know if it goes single digits, but I believe it goes down to like around 10 or 11. I can't think off the top of my head, but also that Irene scene is, I mean, we all use transducers for different reasons. I use them all the time, But in like my late night mode, it really turns the subs down, cranks the transducers up, so I'm not bothering anybody else in the house, and I can still enjoy myself. But I like 10 hertz at an extreme volume level, where I think it's super enjoyable. But Kat will leave the room, even though we're not up at a level that she's used to at 20 hertz. But it actually gives her terrible anxiety. 10, 11, 12 hertz at 140 dB gives her terrible anxiety, and she won't even sit in this room with me. So I think what I think it is for her is she can feel things happening to her, but she can't really hear them, and it gives her a weird sensation that she doesn't know how to deal with, so she'd rather just get herself out of the environment.
So it's like a literal fight or flight response.
Yeah,
Right.
because we've been to, we just did a Metallica concert last week, and we've been to Skrillex concerts. She sat in here during 150 dB demo, at 20 hertz, but any of that 10 hertz stuff at a super high volume, she gets goosebumps, she gets jittery. We had on the one live we did, I had her on a heart monitor, and as soon as we started hitting the low stuff, she jumped up like 145 heart rate.
I think there's intent to that on some cases. I can think of a couple movies that do that. X-Men First Class at the beach scene, and also the reaping scene in the Hunger Games when she's like getting selected. There's really low, and I don't even know the frequency, but it's super low stuff that's going on in the background that makes the anxiousness or the anxiety in those scenes go up. So, Sheldon, in your room, have you in particular? I guess my
we
camera
lost you
died.
again.
Yeah, you were frozen there, and now you're not.
Okay,
Now
that's
you're
okay.
gone.
So in those scenes, have you by chance played either of those scenes in your room? The X-Men First Class beach scene or the Hunger Games reaping scene? I would think it'd be interesting to do that with a high pass filter on or off. Is basically where I'm.
You know what? The Hunger Games I just watched with the family, so and I didn't test it out at all. But that beach scene, yeah, many years ago, that was when I just had 8. And in fact, now that I think about it, to be totally honest, all the testing I did was before I had 16 18s. It was when I had 8 18s. So yeah,
Only
but
8?
that beach scene goes, yeah.
Only 8.
That beach scene goes down to like 5 hertz, if I remember right. That X-Men scene, like pretty strong. But if you do bass EQ, tons of movies go down that low.
I guess my thought would just be that, but with the exception of those couple movies and maybe a few more, for the most part, I would agree with that statement that Peter made that like a 16 hertz tune is all you need. But I think there are very few, but maybe a few examples where that's not 100% true.
Well, unless you have the firepower in a smaller room like Scott has, and you like it, like his wife doesn't like it, but if you like it, then yeah.
Hey,
I had to
There he
switch
is.
back to the more reliable Logitech camera from 10 years ago.
That bright overexposed forehead.
Yeah. All right. So the next one here, sorry for the distraction.
there was someone that was asking about BEQ. Means that Sheldon brought it up. I thought maybe you could.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
What
Is
was
it
that, Tim?
New post?
Someone in the comments had asked about BEQ and if we used it. I know you use it quite a bit, so maybe just kind of touch on that a little bit.
I used to use it. I've stopped. I've ran into just too many movies that have scenes where you're not really supposed to get a feel, like a low end feel, and you get it, and it just started driving me nuts. So instead, I just have 3 different presets on my mini DSP. Of the 4 presets, one of them's for music. Then I have 3 more, and all 3 of them have different levels of boost at the low end. And I'll look at before I watch a movie, especially if I'm watching with other people, I'll look at the graph, look at the BEQ graph, or on that thread, and I can just kind of tell by looking which one of those I should use. And if at any point I feel some kind of movement I shouldn't feel, then I can just hit one button on the remote to go back to where it doesn't have that low end boost. So I don't really use it like I used to, but I do think it definitely has its place, because there's a lot of movies that at 30 hertz they just drop off a cliff. So Yeah.
Okay, so this question from Dan Jones. When you guys talk about dB level, and we mentioned it all throughout, 140, 150 dB, that type of stuff, is this A weighted or C weighted, or what are we talking about?
Z weight, no weight.
In my case, it's usually C weighted. But,
yeah, all the meters that I found, because when obviously you have a hard time finding a meter that will reliably record above 135, 140 dB. So that made me step into like the term lab world, car audio. I reached out to my car audio guys, and yeah, in all the car competitions or any of the readings, that's all. There's no weight to any of that. So yeah, term labs and that none of that's weighted. If I'm tuning the room, just for regular playback, C weighted is pretty much the norm. I don't think anybody's doing A weighting in their rooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Comes and goes too quickly.
Okay, Dan had another comment here. If you have near field subs, is there much benefit in making your main or far field subs play super low?
There's yes and no.
Depends on how they're interacting with each other. Yeah. I don't think there's a exact answer on that. The answer is depends, I think.
I think if you're fighting for headroom and you need more output, you might not boost. Like in my case, where I have to boost my low frequencies 9 dB. If I was fighting for more output, I could just not do that on my far field subs, not boost there, and that would give me more headroom everywhere else. But I'm not in that position, so I just EQ all my subs the exact same with the same shell filter. In answer to your question, it's probably not as necessary in my opinion, because the near field are going to be giving you that feel, and you don't have to make your front subs work as hard. But depending on how you're mixing them, and if your filters aren't, like if you have ported and sealed, you could potentially, if you're trying to do these kind of interactions, make bad things happen with modes and nulls and phase interactions and so forth. So be careful with that. Make sure and measure with your OmniMic or REW program.
And maybe not Dan in particular, but I got a lot of people that ask me, because those subs are closer, you must not be able to turn them up as loud. Because I think a lot of people don't understand that once you get them properly time aligned, you really can't tell as much that they're there. So for the people that aren't time aligning, they say, if it's closer, you got to turn the volume down a lot so they're not as loud. I think, and Dan, this isn't to you in particular. I just think some people that once you time align, all the subs are the equal distance away from you. It doesn't matter if they're near field or not. Now, and also depending on the hertz, just messing around in my room, if I try to cross over the subs at like 120 hertz, I can hear a lot of activity out of the near fields that I do not like at all. So for the people that are doing higher crossovers, then if I had to, then I would keep my near fields down at 80 if I had to cross the other ones, to support like super small satellite speakers or something.
I agree with you on that. I play my near fields historically with my Brown Brookline chairs at just a single dB less than my far field, and you can't tell there are subs behind me. With my new chairs, these Manwha chairs, for whatever reason, or the proximity or something, I have to turn them down about 2 to 3 dB to where I don't feel like they're behind me or hear them behind me. So it's in the same ballpark. Like it's not very much. You have to turn them down. Okay, so this is from Abe Froman. Is there an advantage at all to putting subwoofers on stands?
Abe Roman, Sausage King of Chicago.
George Peterson.
I'll touch on this real quick, Abe, because I noticed this in a lot of testing I did with the RTJs I have in my living room, which is 4 sealed 18s, 2 at the floor, 2 at the ceiling. I noticed that obviously it's all about room modes at that point, but having subs near the ceiling. And, one of my Cat 4000s is stacked floor to ceiling, is it can really smooth things out by, attacking those room modes from different locations. I noticed that if I test my 2 bottom subs upstairs and test the 2 top subs, and then you mix them together, having the subs in different locations, it's just like moving 4 subs around your theater on the floor, different locations, different wavelengths. You can hurt yourself too. But I noticed an improvement by having subs at the ceiling and at the floor.
Yeah,
I have to with my stacks that go floor to ceiling. Yeah, same thing in my room.
I noticed the same when I had the 4 stacks the 4 in stacks, I noticed the top 2 could almost be EQ'd differently than the bottom 2. Like if you're going to pair them, it made sense. Like their native response individually, the top 2 are closer than the bottom 2. So yeah, I think there are advantages. In fact, I've read some of the acoustic designers and so forth. They'll model those subs and they'll put them in 3D space, and they might say, hey, like if we only got a couple subs, this works best in our models at 2.5 feet in the air, and like you're not just putting it on the floor. Like there's math and science to the waves and all that kind of stuff, the frequencies that you're trying to.
Yeah, I'm sure your room layout has a lot to do with it too. How your room's set up and designed, and
distances as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Sizes and dimensions. Okay, so this last one here is talking about from Sean Sass. Why haven't any of the home theater guys built a subwoofer out of their entire basement? So are you talking like making? I thought this was kind of interesting thing, even though I didn't really understand what you're thinking.
Well,
But
I think I know what he's talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
At first, I thought I almost said yes. Actually, I did say somebody did do that, but he's saying how come the home theater guys haven't done that before? Because it has been done in the 2-channel world. Famously, there was that one Italian guy who, if you've ever seen the pictures, he literally horn subwoofers. Literally, his entire basement was basically like curved walls, poured concrete for the back wave, and then on the first floor is where the subs were at, and the back wave went down into it, and so it wasn't like a full basement. It was like if a basement had like 6.5, 7 foot tall ceilings, kind of thing. Like it was pretty short basement all the way through. It wasn't like something that maybe you could live through, but like the entire bottom of his house was for the back wave to pull off the subwoofer frequencies. So,
Wow.
I never saw that.
You could still find it. I bet you if you looked up.
Yeah, there's some photos. I'm pulling it up on my side real quick.
Yeah. So that's probably what Sean's referring to there. And that was like the stuff of internet legends for years. Like it's a pretty old one. I want to say that's like a 15-year-old experiment that somebody pulled that off.
It may be even further older than that, but yeah. I'm finding it in Google, but I can't actually get a full big photo of it.
There used to be a website about it that had a whole bunch of build pics, like old style website. You might be able to find that. If anyone's got the pictures, you can feel free to pull it up and show it. I was reading this comment more like I saw this Russian YouTube video where a guy like had his.
I know what video you're talking about.
Well, like in one of the videos I'm thinking about, he was like inside of a subwoofer box, and he had set up like his little viewing area or his little seating area inside a subwoofer box.
Was he like climbs in and out of the port?
I don't know.
I automatically typed into Google after watching that video, how safe is it for an American to go to Russia? And it's not very safe.
Yeah, probably not worth the risk to see the subwoofer man.
Yeah.
So yeah, why haven't any of the home theater guys given up 1/3 of the equity of their home to build a subwoofer? I think that's what the question's asking.
Yeah, come on, somebody do it.
Tim, did you find those pictures? Are they?
I did. I'm having to zoom in because it's super low resolution, but let me see if I can present real quick. Screen.
See if it's.
Well, are you pulling up the guy that lives in his subwoofer or the giant horn?
Really, it's the floor that he built the horn into.
Okay.
Let's see if I can share that.
Pretty low res.
It is. It's very low. Can you see it all or not?
I have seen that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the horn path. You move your mouse on the horn path for the audience.
Yeah.
Like you
So
can
like going around. I don't know how it actually functions, but yeah, it's basically 2 loops, one on each side, going out and around.
that was poured concrete, like designed.
Yep.
Well, you could give a home theater tour like no other. Now we're going to take a trip through my horn.
Yeah.
So you just walk through there and
We call it the mouth maze.
yeah.
So anytime we think we've lost our minds, just pull up those pictures,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, okay, we're still
sane.
Hey, there's levels to this
Even
sickness.
Scott.
All right,
Okay.
guys. I do got to get going. I got to put little one to bed. So,
All right.
hey,
All right,
thanks for
Scott.
having me on. Always a joy hanging out with you guys, talking
Thanks,
shop.
Scott.
Nice
We'll
We'll
having
see you
you.
in KC sometime soon.
Yeah, man.
Agreed.
For sure, no doubt. You boys have a good evening.
Thank you,
All right,
Kevin.
you too.
All right.
All right, I got a few more comments here to read in the live chat, and then we'll just call
Well,
it
I'm
a
gonna
night.
share one more time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Found a better one. Is that this? Yes. Okay. There you go.
Add to stage.
Yeah, that is better.
Wow.
I didn't realize that there was 8 drivers on each side in that design. That's interesting. That was long because I actually think this might have been in the 1990s they made this. Does it say
was
does
it?
it say a date, Tim?
I bet it's
I
pretty
couldn't
old.
find anything showing a date, but it does seem very old. Yeah.
I wish there were like finished product pictures of the room.
There
and,
is.
like,
I've seen them.
videos.
I
Oh,
Yeah,
didn't-
there is. They're floating around on a singular build website.
oh, okay.
Okay, so Tim, was there more you wanted to show there? Or is that the only one?
I got one more.
Okay.
Let me switch. I don't know how to switch what I'm presenting though. Present.
You might have to go back to stop or share your whole screen instead.
Does anybody have pictures of the guy that lives in his not lives, but goes in his sub to watch movies or whatever? Are you guys making that up?
No, it was like it wasn't even full height. Like he couldn't stand up in there. He kind of crawled in and he had a little seating area. And at one point, like his girlfriend was in there with him, and they're like, I mean, think about the violence that's kind of like some of those car audio videos. That was in his house. Like he was in a sub box like that inside the box.
That's like something base that Hertz would have done. Right?
There was a guy on ABS Forum years ago that used to build those giant, like low tuned horns, like port reflex. I'm thinking they were like 14 hertz, 13 hertz. And they were like the size of a bedroom, and he would build them in his living room. Do you remember that guy's name? I can't remember it. Kind of a dead end here if none of us recall, but that was a funny thread to follow too, because it was so outlandish. I mean, he's had a normal house and he had these giant, like 10 by 12 boxes in there in his house in like a normal sized living room that took up 2/3 of the living room.
Not to get dark, but there was a guy like that that passed away.
That might be the same guy we're talking about. I think he committed suicide.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Are you able to see like the finished room that I'm showing right now?
Here we go. Add to stage.
Yeah, there you go. That's what the room ended up with.
Oh. Whoa.
That's not really how I remember that room. But maybe I'm thinking about something different. Look at the acoustic treatments. It's like
I know it's a lot of wild like diffusion, 2D or whatever diffusion on the ceiling.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody's definitely
Pretty
lost their
wild.
mind.
I hope they liked it.
Yeah, right.
One that made a horn tower. Let me put this up. Hold on. New tab. This is interesting. Let me stop and restart it. This will be this tab, I think. Yeah. Kind of interesting design.
Whoa, it went away. Oh, there it is. Whoa.
Where are you digging up these terrible, like low resolution pictures?
We're so old. I bet these pictures are all.
Yeah.
Yeah, cameras used to be measured in just pixels.
What is
I'm
coming
negative.
out of all the, like, it looks like some sort of alien movie. Like there's little tube worms coming out of the floor and
I
the
think
doors.
it's just conduit runs that haven't been
I
finished.
think,
off.
yeah. It looks like conduit. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, nothing more fun than that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do we have anything else to add, or we?
Oh, that's good.
What's up?
I don't like belaboring the point myself.
I agree. All right. Thanks for your time tonight, guys. Enjoyed the discussion.
It was fun.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. And
All
thank
right.
you to the at-home audience for tuning in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget to hit Jonathan's like and subscribes.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
Ding ding.
All right. Until next time. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
All right,
Bye, guys.
boys. See ya.